Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue.
Life. So they focus on what they want. So two sides to it. You can't have both. One cannot worship God and Mammon at the same time. Either you will worship the one and despise the other. So this is from the gospel. Jesus Christ says this. Or you will want one and neglect or despise the first one. There is a subtler, more technical point here. The technical point is we cannot objectify the self and realize it. The technical point here is that the self is self-luminous. It reveals itself. Just like a light. The light reveals every other object in the room. But you don't need another light to reveal this light. The light reveals itself. All you need to do is look at the light. To whom will the light reveal itself? To the one who looks at the light. This is the technical point which is discussed as vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. I have mentioned this on other occasions. The pervasion by the mental modification, pervasion by reflected consciousness. Brief summary, and if you want details, you can find it in the text called Vedanta Sara. This is the epistemology of enlightenment. How do we get any kind of knowledge? Because of two things. One is vritti vyapti, pervasion by the mind. What does pervasion by the mind mean? You basically have to think about it. It has to come into our minds through maybe through the eyes or ears. You see it, hear it, or you read about it. Basically, the mind has to objectify it. This is called vritti vyapti. There has to be a vritti, modification in the mind about the object of knowledge. That's one. Now, consciousness is reflected, the Atman is reflected in that vritti, in the mind. That reflected consciousness now illumines the content of that vritti. The consciousness reflected in the mind illumines the content. Whatever is presented in the mind is illumined by the consciousness reflected therein. That is called phala vyapti, pervasion by reflected consciousness. So, knowledge is two things. All knowledge. Vritti vyapti, you must think about it. Phala vyapti, it must be illumined by the reflected consciousness. Then only you get the feeling, I know it, I get it. Any kind of knowledge. Except enlightenment, self-knowledge. In self-knowledge, the mind has to be focused, has to think about, contemplate, bring into view the real nature of the self. It has to be turned upon itself into one's own real nature. How do you do that? Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. You hear about these things, you think about it, and then the reflected consciousness is not required to illumine pure consciousness. You don't need reflected light to illumine. You don't need moonlight to illumine sunlight. You don't need moonlight to illumine the sun. You need moonlight to illumine the earth at night. But when the sun rises, you don't need the moon to now reflect and shine on the sun and illumine the sun. The sun reveals itself. Similarly, when the mind gets it right, what the self is, when the clarity comes, that very clarity allows it to recognize the self for what it is, but without objectifying, because then it's flooded. It recognizes the light with which it is always flooded. We are ever immersed in the self, in limitless radiance, and that becomes clear. And that is called enlightenment. So, for ordinary knowledge, vritti vyapti is necessary, phala vyapti is necessary. Pervasion by mind is necessary, pervasion by reflected consciousness is necessary. For enlightenment, self-realization, pervasion by mind is necessary. That's why shravana, manana, nididhyasana is necessary. Study of the text, thinking about it, meditating upon it, necessary. But that does not reveal to us the Atman. The Atman reveals itself. So the deeper technical meaning of this is the clue to enlightenment. It says you have to choose the Atman, means in our thought, in our understanding, in our reasoning, we must focus, stay with it. Will that reveal to us the Atman? No, the Atman will reveal itself. Because it's self-luminous. It does not require our mind to reveal. It does not require, in technical words, phala vyapti, pervasion by reflected consciousness. This issue comes up in the Vedanta Sara in an interesting way. A question is raised towards the end of Vedanta Sara when you come to the epistemology or the psychology of enlightenment. How does enlightenment happen? Precisely what do you mean by self-realization? So the question is asked, what is the role of the mind in self-realization? And two quotations are given from the Upanishads. One says, Manasai Vedam Aptavyam. It is to be realized by the mind alone. Self-realization is done by the mind alone. Where else is self-realization? Can't be done by your knees or your kidney. It has to be done by the mind alone. The other quotation shows it cannot be done by the mind. Yan manasana manute, which is not, cannot be thought about or grasped by the mind. Now, how can both of them be right at the same time? One says, by the mind alone you will get enlightenment. The other one says, by the mind you cannot do it. The Atman cannot be thought of by the mind. Then what does it mean? These two together gives you a clue to what is enlightenment. And then there's a discussion of vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. Because vritti vyapti is necessary, so by the mind alone it can be realized. Because phala vyapti is not necessary, by the mind it cannot be realized. So in that sense. This is one of Shankaracharya's favorite quotes. It comes up again and again, that how he who chooses the Atman, to that one the Atman chooses. Devotees also, those who love God in devotional, dualistic religion, this is exactly what is meant by surrender, faith and surrender. I constantly choose God, then God chooses me. That allows the grace of God to operate. Now, a question might be, yes, that's all right, but how do you constantly choose God? It's not that easy. See, the wanting, Sri Ramakrishna says, Vyakulata, the desperate desire for God, like Sri Ramakrishna himself. He wept and cried for the vision of the Divine Mother. That's called Vyakulata. That's what the Upanishad is talking about. But the problem with that is, we all know. You cannot command somebody to want something. Either one wants it or one does not want it. It's like saying, eat, one can eat. If you ask me to eat, I can eat. But if you say, be hungry, how can I be hungry if I don't feel hunger? So, one can behave lovingly, one can behave affectionately and caringly. But how can one feel affection, love, and care if one does not feel it internally? So, you cannot command a desire. It has to be generated, it has to come from within. So, that takes time. And the clues are given here that that first of all, stepping away from worldly desires with effort. Yes, one might say that until one is enlightened, because the logic is because we do not know our Purnam nature, our infinite nature. That's why we feel limited, and that's why we have desires. And yet, because of these desires, we cannot come to enlightenment. We'll never know our Purnam nature or limitless nature. Isn't it a vicious circle? That because of our ignorance, we are trapped in the samsara. Because of we are trapped in samsara and desire, we cannot overcome ignorance we cannot get self-knowledge. But it starts with the teaching, the desire for self-knowledge. Notice, we already have the desire. That's an interesting thing. That's why we are present here. That's why we are taking all this trouble. That's why so many people are on the path, in whichever path they are. So the desire for self-knowledge, this desire for enlightenment, nirvana, moksha, is a very, very strong desire in all of us. It's already there. We have to fan it. We have to purify it. And the struggle for stepping back from worldliness and focusing more and more on the spiritual path. Sri Ramakrishna put it in very simple words. Vishaya virag, Ishwarya anurag. A dispassion for Vishaya, for objects, sense objects, and an increasing yearning and love of God. The mind by itself is not an enemy. Purified of worldliness, it runs to God. Like a little child runs to its mother, the mind runs to God. It's the source of the mind itself. But it's because we have distorted the mind, we have put so much junk in the mind and perverted the mind is sick now. And therefore it cannot go to the divine. We need to purify it and give it treatment.
So he's talking about how we, hold on, I'm trying to word. we in a sense desire enlightenment to a degree. But the problem is the sure fact that I think we as human beings seek the easiest path there, which is the reason why we tend to go for the world stuff, because it is easy to see that it's there, that it does exist, and that it can give us happiness, but it's all temporary. And that lies where the problem is the fact that, I mean, you can kind of see it even in America in terms of like joy and happiness. Even that alone, not even seeking enlightenment, but just seeking joy and happiness, we see that we rush to materialistic things. We even push away people for these things, and the proof that we seek for easy things is the sheer fact that we're not willing to put in a lot of work for a lot of things. Like example, there's depression going on in the United States, and there's a lot of people in medication. Well, instead of putting in the work to eliminate that unjoyfulness in your life, instead you just take a pill. Instead of putting work to lose weight, you take a pill. Instead of putting work to lower your blood pressure, you take a pill. You know, it's just everything is done in an easy method, and finding true enlightenment is not easy. You know, that's the reason why we seek the external pleasures in the world, because it's much easier. But again, much like the pill, much like everything else, it's all just temporary. And we just continue to seek out this temporary fulfillment just because it is so much easier than actually having to put in the work for it.
Bishaya Birag, Ishwarya Anurag. Sri Ramakrishna also gives the answer. Simple, such simple answer. Everybody can understand without even studying the Upanishads. He says, the more you go towards these, the more the West remains behind. So how do I give up these desires? He says, you don't have to. Don't struggle there. Struggle rather in the positive direction. Move towards God. Study, meditate, pray, serve. Don't struggle with negativities. The more and more we fill up our time and energy with divinity, the more the worldliness will drop away, will slip away. One monk in the Himalayas, he put it this way: if you are constantly surrounded by bad company, criminals and cheats and thieves, instead of fighting against them, it's very difficult. They'll beat you up. Instead of fighting against them, hang out with the cops. Make friends with the cops and hang out with them. So the criminals won't approach you. They'll step back. They will slowly slide away from you. So that way, go more towards God. The worldliness will drop away slowly. In one sense, it's direct. The reality is available right now. In another sense, it's long and convoluted because of the complications which we have made in our own mind. It's difficult to cleanse the mind so easily. Now, one more point here before we move on. See, pravachana, Vedic study or religious talks, medha, the purified and sharpened intellect, and shruta, that means hearing, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. He's not knocking them. He's not criticizing them. He says all of them are necessary. But by themselves, they won't work unless the crucial factor is intense yearning for self-realization and a dispassion for the world. That's the engine. Otherwise, it'll all be half-hearted. It'll all be half-hearted. And we'll complain it doesn't work. We'll move forward 2 steps and slide back 1 step. So that fierce moving forward towards God, that comes when there's an intense renunciation for the world and yearning for God. Yes, then Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, they become powerful. The medha, the purified and sharpened intellect, that becomes useful then. That will work. And pravachana, even the simplest of religious teachings, we will take it to heart. Otherwise, Shankaracharya himself says, in the same class, when you teach Vedanta, a few understand what was taught, a few half understand it, some partly and partly not, and a few understand completely the opposite meaning of what was taught. And a few don't even know, they don't remember. And what was taught just came this way and went out that way. That's because of lack of yearning. If we really want it, we'll be ever so attentive, ever so full of faith and conviction. We'll always feel, yes, yes. Josephine MacLeod, disciple of Swami Vivekananda. Disciple is, I mean, she was, but she just refused to call herself a disciple. She said, I'm a friend of Vivekananda. And she writes about Vivekananda. The first time I heard Vivekananda speak, it was truth. The second time I heard him speak, it was truth. And every time I heard him speak, it was truth. It speaks to you directly. That's because already we are ready. To the skeptic, it won't speak directly. To the faint, to the person who is whose aspiration is faint, it will not speak so directly. Yes, but we have 10 more questions. But the seeker who is turned away from the world and intensely wants this will say, yes, this is what I wanted. And I'm going to hold on to this and move forward. In this life itself, I will attain enlightenment.
That's really weird, kind of, because to the skeptic, it's they don't get it. But isn't that kind of what we're supposed to be? I mean, it's not just to automatically believe in what anyone says, right? You can't just if someone comes up and says, "I know the way to enlightenment," and you're like, "Okay, I believe you. Let's go." You don't do that. You kind of have to be a skeptic. Yes, but I have 10 more questions. So I mean, this kind of turns it into faith, though. Where if you're not a skeptic and then you just hear someone the first time and believe it to be true without any evidence, it's faith based. So, and again, this is the reason why I was going to say I do wonder why he's talking about bhakti yoga quite a bit in this one, because it is the I believe to be the easiest path to enlightenment, versus the other yogas. But and again, if you just believe without evidence, it is kind of faith based. And I worry about that because obviously there are very much scammers out there that will take advantage of anyone. So to be a skeptic is kind of necessary. It kind of sucks that you just can't trust anyone in the world. Um, you'd hope that everyone was trustworthy, but the reality is that not everyone is trustworthy. So you have to be a skeptic. And I guess with being a skeptic, it's going to take you a lot longer for time to get enlightenment, to follow this person's path. But at the very least, when you're a skeptic, you've tested this person and you believe him to be true, instead of just believing the person right from the start and then potentially getting, say, a bad faith person who's just looking to get money or whatever.
One more. This is also a follow-up on the on the third mantra. Mantra number 4. नायमात्मा बलहीनेन लभ्यो न च प्रमादात् तपसो वाप्यलिङ्गात् एतैरुपायैर्यतते यस्तु विद्वान् तस्यैषात्मा विशते ब्रह्मधाम. Further instructions. Number 4. Translation. This self is not attained by one devoid of strength, nor through delusion, nor through knowledge unassociated with monasticism. But the self of that knower who strives through these means, it enters into the abode that is Brahman. So 3 powerful practices have been prescribed here. These are advanced practices, by the way. We'll see. Self-realization is not possible for the weak, for those devoid of strength. Balahinena labhya. Here, the meaning of bala, strength, is it can cover a whole spectrum. Remember, even physical strength, emotional strength, intellectual strength, moral strength, then only spiritual strength. That's why Vivekananda emphasized all of it. That's the meaning of Vivekananda's famous exhortation to play football. You'll be closer to heaven by playing football rather than by reading the Gita. And then he explains that he knows, I know where the shoe pinches. It's through a vigorous body, it's through mental maturity, emotional strength, and intellectual conviction. All these strengths are necessary, moral strength. But above all of them comes, Shankaracharya explains, Atmanishtha janita virya hinena. Balahina means devoid of strength, means devoid of the strength which comes by living your life in accordance with the knowledge of the Atman. By living your life in accordance with what we know. We already know a lot. The problem is we don't abide by what we know. I love this saying. It was probably Plato who said it. To know the good is to do the good. To know the good is to be good. And we often immediately we think, no, that's not right. We all know what's good, but it's so difficult to be good. Yes, it's only because our minds are polluted and our will is weak. We know something is right. We agree with it, but we can't do it. As the poet Eliot said, between the intention and the act falls the shadow. Between the intention and the act falls the shadow. I think it's Eliot. And the shadow is our own imperfect natures. So what the Greek philosopher meant was, if we had perfected ourselves, then what we know to be right, we would do it. There wouldn't be any hesitation. There wouldn't be any faltering. And that I see in the lives of the saints. What they know to be right, they execute it. What they understand, they follow it in their own lives. Sri Ramakrishna said it's a very, very powerful practice. One of the greatest things he admired was, said, Mon Mukh Akkara, making your tongue and the mind the same. What you say is what you are. What you are is what you say. Don't claim anything more than what you are, and don't make a division between what we think internally and what we say and do externally. We just deprive ourselves of most of our power by doing that. Now he says, Atmanishtha Janita Virya, the vigor, the power that comes of standing on the Atman. Standing on the Atman means knowing that I am this limitless existence consciousness place. Now think, what does that mean? Even before self-realization, once we have clarity, once these non-dual teachings have made sense to us and we begin to see, yes, that makes sense. Yes, this is right. Then confront the issues that life throws up. Then you'll realize why this Vivekananda called this life a gymnasium. Then it will truly become a spiritual gymnasium. Everything will help in our spiritual progress then. A little physical weakness, a little pain there, and a little ache there. What is it to me? I am the limitless consciousness. Because of me, this body mind is illumined. It has its own existence because of me. It does not exist apart from me. What can a little pain or an ache do to me, the immortal consciousness or Brahman? And so, what you are doing, you are elevating the mind. Atman is already there. The mind which is sunk in body awareness or body consciousness, you're elevating it to Atman consciousness. Again and again, Sri Ramakrishna's words, the direct disciples like Swami Turiyananda and others in their elder years, as disease came, old age came, and death came near, they repeat this. Oh my mind, let the body know its pain. Let the body know its suffering or pain. You, my mind, remain in peace and joy. Shorid jane, rog jane, shorid jane. Mon tu anande thak. Let the mind remain in happiness. Now, what does that mean? How will the mind remain happily in peace in the midst of disease and old age and problems? It's only in this, centered in self-knowledge, that I am the Atman. Try it when emotional shocks come, when ups and downs of life come. Can we maintain mental serenity? Atman is serene anyway. Atman is pure consciousness. Even if I get tremendously upset, the self remains the same anyway. But can I prevent getting tremendously upset?
That is something that I was talking about, like how this is something that I strive. Is the fact that, as I watch his videos, I thought enlightenment means that you do not suffer in the world. It's not to say that you're emotionless, but it's to say that you don't suffer. Like you can still, Like all you feel is at least joy and understanding. And what I mean by joy and understanding, joy obviously it's pretty self-explanatory. You have joy and then you have sadness, the opposite of joy. But why joy and then why understanding? Where's sadness at? Sadness, hopefully, at least from what I was hoping, enlightenment wouldn't be sadness. And why is there understanding? Understanding is because instead of sadness, you have understanding. So whenever people die, you understand that it's obviously their time to go, so you're not sad about it. I like to believe that when you understand things, you don't suffer from it, and instead, you can like understand that it's people's time to go, or they made bad decisions and it's their time to go, and then you can celebrate their life instead of moping or being sad about it. Again, you understand it's their time to go, so you're not sad, and then you can be joyful by celebrating their life, the life that you've had with them, the life that they've had with other people, and talk about the good times, and not necessarily be sad. I mean, you can still cry; it's an emotional thing, but you can do it out of joy, cry for joy. So, I've kind of thought enlightenment was like that, and but the thing is, though, is that when I hear about Swami Vivekananda, you hear he still cries, he still feels emotion, he tears up and feels sadness and all of that, and I think Sri Ramakrishna, I believe, still felt pain in the body, like the throat cancer, of course, being, I believe the joke that he kind of says is like, "Oh, the doctors figured me out." Um, but I think, at least I think that Sri Ramakrishna is a bit different. But at least Swami Vivekananda, about him crying and getting very emotional in terms of sadness, I thought that was kind of strange. He's considered to be enlightened. Why is he still suffering in life? And they explain, and I believe in his videos, they explain to me the sheer fact that just because you're enlightened doesn't mean your body doesn't feel emotion. It's just that you understand that you are the Atman Brahman, and that the body is still the body. It's still part of the materialistic world. That it will still suffer, sadness, joy, all of these things. And I was like, man, I thought enlightenment would at least get rid of suffering, and now Swami Sarvapananda here is kind of saying that, where let's see, the ups and downs comes from serene. Let's see, let's go right
Come.
here.
Can we maintain mental serenity? Atman is serene anyway. Atman is pure consciousness. Even if I get tremendously upset, the self remains the same anyway. But can I prevent getting tremendously upset?
That So that's what I've been saying here. It's like, I hope that I through watching his videos and through understanding that I can reduce suffering. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve. I'm not hoping to achieve enlightenment. If I get there, that's great. And I've been kind of saying that too throughout these videos. And then amazingly, with the sheer fact that he just said that the Ahmed Brahman itself is already serene, it's already enlightened. You don't have to do anything to achieve that because it's already that. So that's perfect. I don't have to do that then. I just have to continue to work on the reduction of suffering.
Swami Premeshanji asks a novice, what is the practice for a monk? Um, you know, so the novice says, it should be humble, you should put up with whatever the world throws at you. And Premeshanji says, no, that's cowardice. That's cowardice. You should go ahead and do whatever is right as a monk. But he says, not to be upset. That's the practice. Don't let the world make you upset. And that's not easy at all. The world is making us upset all the time, trying in 100 different ways. And trying not to get upset on the basis of what? Not a forced kind of robotic calmness, on the basis of self-knowledge. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am that, not by repeating it mechanically, by seeing it's a fact. Why should I be upset? Why should I be upset? Don't let the world upset your mind. Don't let anything disturb your serenity. That's a tremendous practice. You might say it's easier said than done. That's why it's a practice. That's why Shankaracharya says it's strength. Without this strength, he says, you cannot have self-realization. This is before self-realization. Another thing, there's a term nowadays, spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing. It seems some people use some kind of spiritual logic. I am the Atman, Brahman, I'm pure consciousness, and I don't confront my problems. Suppose I have personality problems, moral failings, or problems from the world outside. I choose to avoid it, hide my head in the sand like an ostrich, claiming to be Brahman. No, that is spiritual bypassing. That is not what Advaita recommends. See here. It says, na balahinena. One must have strength. One must have strength. And to face whatever life throws at us. And be of good cheer as the Atman, as Brahman. What is the problem for me? Then I can deal with that without becoming upset. I can deal with that much more effectively, much more wisely. Otherwise, when we deal with things, respond to things from a position of being upset, fearful, scared, we usually think, say, and do the wrong things. We don't act at our potential. We don't act with the limit of, at the peak of our wisdom. Then he says, the second practice, na pramadat, inadvertence, carelessness. There's an ancient Indian saying, pramado vai mrityuhu. Lack of mindfulness is death. So, apramada is mindfulness. Mindlessness, heedlessness is death, especially here. Keep the mind on Vedanta. Don't let it slip from Vedanta. There is a saying common among monks, asupte amrite kalam nait Vedanta chintaya. Until you fall asleep and until you die, spend your time in Vedantic thought. Keep reading, thinking continuously about these things, and until you fall asleep, which is pretty easy. When you're thinking too much about Vedanta, you fall asleep. All right, that's all right, you fall asleep. But then when you wake up, start thinking about Vedanta again. And until, how long will I have to do this? Until death, until the end of this life. That's the spirit. If you become a monk, what will you do? You'll do that. That's why you have become a monk for. One Swami wrote to the Holy Mother saying that I'm in Rishikesh and meditating. I've repeated the mantra so many thousands and thousands of times, but the Lord has not revealed himself to me. And she wrote back saying two things. She was a little annoyed by that. She used to dictate her letters. Write back to him that, number one, is the Lord a sack of potatoes that you can purchase him with your spiritual practice? The Lord will reveal himself to you. See, the Lord reveals himself to the one whom he chooses. The Atman reveals itself to the one whom it chooses. Now, that's one. The second thing she said was, he has become a monk. If he will not do japa, meditation and japa, repeat the mantra, what will he do? What's the big credit? I've done a lot of japa and meditation. So what's the big credit? That's what you're going to do. Keep doing it. Shankaracharya wrote, it's a little hymn very popular among monks. Vedanta vakyeshu sadaramanta bhikshanna matrena chatushtimanta aharnisham brahma sukhe ramanta kaupinavanta aharnisham brahma sukhe charanta kaupinavanta khalu bhagyavanta. This is called 5 verses on the loincloth, the wearer of the loincloth. This is a monk, the wandering monk. What does it mean? Vedanta vakyeshu sadaramanta, continuously dwelling, enjoying Vedanta vakya, the Vedantic sentences, dwelling on the Vedantic sentences, ever. Then the second one, bhikshanna matrena chatushti mantra, completely satisfied with whatever chance may bring. The alms, the food got from alms. Bhikshanna, the food got from alms. Vivekananda said, the sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, food what chance may bring. Well cooked or ill, judge not. No food or drink can taint that noble self which knows itself. So Bhikshanna matrena chatushti manta, completely satisfied by whatever food you get by begging. So Swami Bhuteshanandaji Maharaj, the 12th president of our order, he spent a lot of time in the Himalayas as in seclusion and meditation, and go for begging for food. He would say the Himalayan monks have a saying among themselves, um, that about food. कभी घी घना तो कभी मुट्ठी भर चना और कभी वो भी मना. What does that mean? Sometimes you get very rich food made in ghee, the clarified butter. Sometimes you get only a handful of gram, mutti bhar chana, and sometimes you don't even get that. Kabhi ghee ghana to kabhi mutti bhar chana or kabhi wo bhi mana. And you should be serene in all three. You should be serene in all three. Difficult, especially if you're hungry, but still you have to. That's the practice. Kopi navanta kalu bhagyavanta brahma sukhe aharnisham ramanta. Ever immersed in the bliss of Brahman, in day and night immersed in the bliss of Brahman. Fortunate indeed is the wearer of the loincloth. Kopi navanta khalu bhagyavanta. Like these 5 verses are there. Wonderful. Most monks, they repeat them, if not regularly, once in a while. So he says next. So first is never forget. First is, of course, strength. Derive strength from living these truths. Try to live accordingly. Don't let your mind be upset. Second, don't forget. Keep your mind on Vedanta. Until you fall asleep, until you die, let the mind dwell on Vedanta. Not just before falling asleep or just before dying. That's an excuse. Then, so this is na pramada, without any inadvertence. Don't let the world seep into you. Then tapaso vapya lingat. So tapas means austerity. Linga means here monasticism. Shankaracharya says becoming a formally becoming a monk. What the Upanishad means, of course, is that the renunciation from the mind, which was already said earlier, a strong renunciation of worldliness, worldly pursuit. What Sri Ramakrishna said, pursuit of lust and gold. Strong renunciation from the mind. Those are not my goals anymore. Artha and kama, pleasure seeking and worldly success. They will come to you. They will come to you. If you are in samsara, they will come to you. But those are not your goals. We are not in samsara to pursue them. And Shankaracharya, he goes further and he says, the linga, the word linga here literally means sign. So the sign is this cloth, the formal cloth of the monastic. That means formally becoming a monk. But it basically means the internal monastic attitude. If formally becoming a monk led to enlightenment, then everybody who became a monk would become enlightened, and nobody who did not become a monk would become enlightened. But we see throughout history until today, there are many among monks who do not become enlightened, and there are many who are not monks who do become enlightened. So it's because. So is it wrong, or is this teaching wrong? No. What is implied here is the inner attitude, renunciation from the heart of lust and gold. That is what is meant by this inner monasticism or inner renunciation. That one has to be monk-like inside. Shankaracharya, of course, is very pro-monk. So he says, no, externally also. If you want to become enlightened, you study this and then live life according to the Vedantic teachings. Never be inadvertent about Vedanta. Keep your mind continuously, 24/7. This is a word she would have liked. Popular in America, Silicon Valley, 24/7. But here, 24/7, they want to keep you engaged in job.
I don't think it's not 24/7. It's 24/7. Uh, that's it. If it's 24/7, then that's the first I've heard of it. But usually it's 24/7, meaning obviously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
24/7, monastic life is, or spiritual life. Keep your mind on Vedanta. The austerities one must practice, tapasya, should be along with monasticism, or inner renunciation and external austerity. Here, austerity, Shankaracharya defines as jnana, the practice of shravana, manana, nididhyasana. Engage yourself in Vedantic study, reasoning, and meditation after taking monastic vows. So this is Shankaracharya's own interpretation. People do that. Even now, people are doing that. This Shivaratri, traditionally in India, on Shivaratri night, the new monks are initiated every year in Banaras and Haridwar and other places also. Um, a young man I knew, he wrote to me just a few days ago saying that, I'm sorry I did not tell you this earlier. Very highly qualified young man, was working in the United States. He says, on an impulse, I went off to India, and in Banaras this year on Shivaratri by such and such Swami. I was initiated into sannyasa, and now I'm off. He told me the name of a very famous mountain where he is going to spend the rest of his life in study and contemplation. So this is formally becoming a monk and following the path of um, self-knowledge. Shankaracharya says, Tapoatra jnanam lingam sannyasa. Tapasya, austerity here means specifically the austerity of Shravana, Manana, and Jidhyasana. Stick to that and becoming a formal monk. Tasya atma vishate brahmadama. Though the Vidwan, the Vedantic student who seeks self-realization by these means, living on the Vedantic truth, never letting the mind wander away from Vedantic contemplation. Where is the time to be unhappy? Where is the time to grumble? Where is the time to fight with others? Where is the time to be greedy and try out this and that, be distracted by the world? Shankaracharya gives a list of things to watch out for. Laukika putra pashwadi vishaya sanga nimitta pramadat. Being diverted by main the sources of diversion. Shankaracharya says, watch out for children, one, and cows. That means your animals. In New York, it won't be cows, it will probably be dogs. So people are diverted by, so you have other people in your life, spouse and children, or the dog, or if you were in ancient India, the cows, you're very worried about your cows. Just basically your wealth in ancient India. Here you'd be worried about the dog or your Wall Street, the stock market portfolio, what's going up and what's going down. That is called pramada, diversion. Stay with Vedanta. Such a person, Atma Vishate Brahmadhama. For that person, the self enters into the abode of Brahman. Literally, what it means is you realize you are Brahman. The self is Brahman. I am Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss. Realization comes. This is the background to it.
Okay. So, I guess throughout most of his talk here, the biggest thing is the distraction of the world, which is obviously is did Einstein practice Vedanta? Oops, got distracted. But yeah, I mean, obviously, there's so many things in life. You know, could you imagine if everyone became a monk? Then who would be give? Where would a monk beg for food at? You know, I don't know. Can monk cook their own food, or do they have to beg for food? Because if they have to beg for food and everyone becomes monks, then no one would have food. But anyways, it's true that the distraction of the world is very strong. Obviously, this distraction elevates the ego to a lot of degrees because the ego is self-preservation, and all these distractions are one, self-preservation, and two, entertainment and pleasure. So, I guess the way I like to look at things is that there's nothing wrong with the pleasures of the world. It's just the problem is the if there is suffering involved with it. So if there is suffering involved with the pleasure, then you're doing it wrong. It's not something that's necessarily pleasurable. If you can find a way to enjoy the pleasure and eliminate the suffering, then I think you're doing it right. And is there a way to do that? I do believe so. Again, this is something that I'm trying to think. Is it exclusively Osho that I've heard this from? But it's just the fact that I remember him saying that there's nothing wrong with enjoying the pleasures of life, but that's the only thing he said. Again, I haven't really reacted to a lot of his videos because they were starting to get becoming just blocked, just outright blocked, and at that point it's like, well, I give up because I can't react to that, try to put it out. All of a sudden, I look at work and I realize like, oh, your video has been blocked. So, well, great. I can't put out another video before the day's over with. So I kind of gave up on Osho there just because it's just becoming blocked. And the thing that I also kind of worried about is like Osho's like, well, there's nothing wrong with pleasures in life. It's like, well, that seems very greedy and such. But as I thought about it a little bit more, I like to believe he says it in this way that there's nothing wrong with enjoying pleasures of life, so long as you don't suffer from it. So it's looking a bit. It looks, in my opinion, it's looked at it a little bit differently, as in there's nothing wrong with enjoying a good cup of coffee or a good cup of tea, so long as you don't suffer from it, or enjoying the company of someone that you love, so long as you don't suffer from that person, or enjoying a brand new car, so long as you don't suffer from it, or a brand new phone, so long as you don't suffer from it. And what's the suffering that comes from a car or a phone? If all of a sudden someone dings your car, or if all of a sudden you drop your phone and your screen is cracked, you're like, oh my gosh, the screen, I can't read, I can't stand to look at my screen because of the crack. Or my brand new car that's spotless now has a ding because someone hit it or whatever. You're suffering now because of these new items. If they were old and they were already banged up, then you look at your screen, you fall like, oh well, it's just another crack. I don't know where it's at because there's just so much I can't tell. So let me just keep using my phone anyway. So it's like there's 500 cracks in your phone, and you drop it. It's like, well, there's another one somewhere. I'm sure of it because nothing survives that kind of fall. Well, the phone still works, so keep using it. You don't mind so much once something's already damaged. You don't suffer from dropping your phone the 200th time because you don't know where that crack's at anymore because there's just so much in your screen. That's the way it's meant to be done, I believe. Where you drop your phone and you don't suffer from dropping your phone because it's already damaged, and it's like, well, I don't know where the crack's at because there's just so many cracks. Like you've bought a used car where it's already paint chipping, it's dinged up. All of a sudden you come back to it, it's like, well, it looks like exactly like the way I left it. But you didn't realize that like so many people hit your car because your car already looks all messed up and you don't even notice. It's like there's already 500 dings on this car, so adding one to two more, I wouldn't be able to tell. That's terrible, but and that's honestly how I felt about my car too. Is because I bought it used, it had some issues. I wasn't too worried if it got dinged up because it's already old. And I don't want to suffer because I bought a car and it got dinged up. I don't want to be upset about my car. So, um, but yeah, that's the way that I kind of saw it. It's the sheer fact that if you don't suffer from the pleasures of life, I think you're doing it right. But yeah, I hope that made sense. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I've said this a few times through this channel as well. Not too often, but hopefully enough. Anyways, that's my reaction to Why Is It So Hard to Reach Enlightenment by Swami Sarvarpiananda. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.